What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to MKE MANIACI, and today we got 10 biggest canceled SummerSlam matches from the partsFUNknown YouTube channel. We are about 10 days away as I'm recording this July 20th. SummerSlam's on the 30th. We 10 days away from the biggest party of the summer. I don't know what the tagline this year is, man, but SummerSlam right around the corner. And to be honest, you know, the card is my personal opinion a little lackluster, man. But nonetheless, I actually do have a video. I'm planning my top 10 favorite SummerSlams of all time, man. So listen, we're going to see what this one all about. The matches that pretty much would have happened, but didn't happen. Let's get it.
SummerSlam is not taking place in August this year, which is the first time that has ever happened. It is bonkers. I guess they just didn't want to counter program against my 35th birthday, which will be running for the entire month of August, by the way. But it got us just thinking about the biggest party of the slightly earlier summer and all the mad plans that at one point or another fallen
Foley and Ambrose. Oh, man.
By the ringside. Some famously cancelled SummerSlam matches did end up taking place at another time. Lesnar versus Bryan was booked for 2014, but eventually happened 4 years later at Survivor Series and was brilliant. Vince versus HBK was booked for 2002, but shelved until Mania 22. Cena versus Reigns was slated for 2016, but pushed back to No Mercy 2017 of all things. Heck, Ric Flair and Randy Savage were originally booked to have a match at the first ever SummerSlam in '88, but Flair stayed with the NWA, so fans had to wait until Mania 8. But what about the matches that almost took place but never happened for one reason or another? Glad you asked. Now shut up and let me tell you. I'm Adam, hailing from partsFUNknown, and here are 10 biggest cancelled SummerSlam matches. If you'd like to check out more SummerSlam content, we've done a bunch of lists on the channel, including our 10 worst and 10 best SummerSlam matches of all time. Check them out. Check it out. What's it all about? Number 10, Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair 2, 2021. Alright, this is a bit of a cheat because Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair has already happened at WrestleMania 37 in a widely acclaimed and iconic main event, Tears for Days, much to the chagrin of Ollie, who hates crying in wrestling. Here he is not crying at CM Punk's return. But no, we've added this to the list considering the rather weighty fact that, at least based on WWE and Sasha's current relationship, we're never getting Banks Belair 2 after Sasha was allegedly released weeks ago after
I refuse to believe that Sasha's release. I saw she was charging like $30,000 per appearance. But I don't know Naomi's status, but I think Sasha is on the outs. But I just don't want to. I can't cope with that. I can't believe it. I can't believe that she's, you know, I don't know.
Public walkout from the company, going home and not even taking her ball with her. All of which shines an even weirder light on the fact that Banks and Belair were booked to have a Mania rematch at SummerSlam last year, but it never happened, and we still don't really know why. With Banks being
this was probably like one of the biggest, like I was expecting, like, you know, long-term storytelling, but that's kind of asking too much from the WWE nowadays. But Bianca to face Carmella only to lose to Becky Lynch, that was a huge swerve. Big comeback moment for Becky though. I will say that was a shocker. I didn't see it coming, but yeah, that was just, it was weird. No explanation, nothing.
Last year, but it never happened, and we still don't really know why, with Banks being replaced by first Carmella, then Becky Lynch. Banks spoke to the New York Post months after SummerSlam, and when asked why she was pulled from the card last minute, told them, "There's no reason. I'm not telling you anything. You're not Oprah," which, to be fair, is true, and just gets us thinking, man, that eventual Sasha Banks documentary is going to be compelling. Number 9, Sabu and RVD versus Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman, 1997. Back in 97, WWE was, like Ozzy Osbourne, going through changes, and a lot of those changes involved silly people doing silly things. The company was still taking steps out of the new generation and into the Attitude Era. Raw had been rebranded Raw is War. Brian Pillman had already had a gun. Things were getting grungy and fast, and which company more exemplified 90s grunge than ECW? Extreme Championship Wrestling entered into a working relationship with a Big Dub in the mid-90s, culminating in an on-screen invasion in 97, complete with work shoot promos from Paul Heyman and friction with Jerry Lawler. Apparently, ECW was set to receive a showcase match at SummerSlam that year, pitting 4 of its biggest stars together in a tag match that could have main evented any ECW pay-per-view. Sabu and RVD versus Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman, but WWE backed out for one reason or another, the most prevalent rumors being perceived attitude problems from ECW's top guys when suggested they wrestle time limit draws with WWE's mid-carders. Number 8.
It's funny because, you know, 9 years later, WWE bought ECW. They rebranded the ECW. brand as their own. And honestly, yeah, it was a flop. But you know, 9 years later, they eventually worked out. I actually enjoyed the summer. The summer of '06 when RVD and Cena had one night stand? The crowd was crazy that night. But you know, RVD and Edge, John Cena, Sabu, the invasion. I actually really enjoyed that invasion back then. I think they did a pretty good job on it. But ECW wouldn't. It just didn't have the longevity to last the way it did. I was okay with them doing one night stand in 2005, one night stand in '06. But after that, it was kind of like, I don't know. WWE didn't do it right.
8. Muhammad Hassan versus Batista, 2005. The sad story. Muhammad Hassan, the Italian man tasked with playing an Arabic heel whose entire character was stop being racist against Arabs, please, whilst also having his ass handed to him by Hulk Hogan, the patron saint of tolerant discourse.
I mean, I want to say this about Muhammad Hassan. I think he was one of the most... I think he still is one of the most underrated heels in the history of the WWE. His run in WWE was pretty short-lived. But I know they had big plans for him. His rivalry with The Undertaker, it got a little personal, and I want to say the network didn't really like some of the things that they did on SmackDown. And I think that was kind of what derailed Muhammad Hassan's push. But I heard it was rumors that they wanted to put the World Heavyweight Championship on Muhammad Hassan, which would have made him one of the youngest champions. I think he was like 24 or 25 at this time. Like, he was very, very young. But man, like, he could... And, you know, in terms of Vince McMahon, when you got heat, like genuine heat with the crowd, you're doing something right. So they got to reward you for that. But I just feel like it was a travesty the way things went down with him, man.
Needless to say, an evil Arabic wrestler got thermonuclear heat in 2005, less than 4 years after 9/11, and WWE, in their way, looked to capitalize on all that deep-seated rage by rocketing Hassan to the top, culminating in a huge World Heavyweight title win over Batista at SummerSlam '05. Sadly, that never came to pass as a result of a segment that aired on SmackDown of Hassan leading a group of men who apparently weren't terrorists but sure did look a whole bunch like terrorists and were summoned by prayer to attack Undertaker. It just happened to air the same day as the 7/7 attacks in London, prompting UPN to demand Hassan be thrown off television. He was soundly defeated by the Dead Man at Great American Bash 2005 in a match that featured the terrorists again, by the way, because you, says WWE, for he was powerbombed through the stage and never seen again.
I think honestly, it was in bad taste and bad timing for that. I think WWE kind of, they kind of took the character a little too far with the mask, man. You know, you could have just, still got your point across with just Daivari, Muhammad Hassan, and Undertaker. But yeah, that was, timing and everything was really bad. And the fact that SmackDown was taped at that time, I mean, obviously you can't really, if it's too close to Showtime, you can't just cut out part of the show, especially a main part like that, man. But yeah, it was kind of a tragedy what happened to Muhammad Hassan. I want to say he's like a social studies teacher now, history teacher or something like that.
Number 7, The Shield versus Brothers of Destruction 2013. And speaking of the Dead Man, remember when The Shield powerbombed The Undertaker through the announce table on SmackDown in 2013? Of course you do, because according to our comments section, wrestling fans remember every thing. Well, it turns out that the attack on Taker by the then undefeated super heel Hounds of Justice was to set up a huge SummerSlam tag team match pitting The Shield against Undertaker and Kane, the Brothers of Destruction. The plan was that Taker would return, team up with his brother, and hand The Shield their very first loss as a complete unit. However, the Dead Man would actually be injured during that triple powerbomb spot, with his injuries not healing up in time for SummerSlam. Perhaps it was because they accidentally injured a WWE legend that The Shield then suffered their first six-man loss a few weeks later on SmackDown, of all places. Dumb that. And speaking of The Shield, number 6, Sting and The Shield versus the Wyatt family 2015.
SummerSlam 2013. I want to go back to the Brothers of Destruction versus The Shield. I want to say that was the SummerSlam Kane faced Bray Wyatt. Like, Bray Wyatt was like, he just came in and he had a match with Kane. So I mean, it worked out in Kane's favor. I can't really remember too much about, like, I remember The Shield kept having matches with Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan. They really wasn't in nothing too serious the summer of 2013.
And speaking of The Shield, number 6, Sting and The Shield versus the Wyatt family 2015.
I never heard of that rumor. Sting and The Shield versus the Wyatt family? Harper, Wyatt, Rowan. Was Strowman Strowman was on TV. Okay,
I get it, because spooky. Thank heavens for AEW, because none of us wanted 2015 to be the last year of Sting's career, seeing as he wrestled 2 matches, lost one to Triple H at Mania, that was silly, and lost the other to Seth Rollins whilst also suffering a then career-ending injury, that was sad. Well, there was supposed to be one more match on Sting's dance card for that year, and one that would have seen him finally get a W on the board. He was booked to team up with Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose to take on the Wyatt family.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's getting okay. Yeah, Seth already been okay. I don't know why I'm thinking like 2013 still. So 2015, of course, Seth at this time was United States. Was he United States? No, Cena was United States champion. Seth was WWE champion. So Seth was out on his own. Roman and Dean, okay, staying in a corner against the Wyatt. This was before Braun Strowman.
W on the board. He was booked to team up with Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose to take on the Wyatt.
I don't know why this time in WWE is kind of like a blur to me. And I'm going to be real. 2015 was a hard year for me personally in my personal life. So a lot of this is kind of like, I ain't really watched wrestling that much in 2015. Let's just say that. I watched it when I could, but I was going through a lot.
Family, Bray, Luke Harper, and Eric Rowan in a battle of who can do the most silly spoops magic. Bray would probably teleport into Sting's house and take a dump in his sink. Sting would make a crow fly out of Rowan's ass. A Bray Wyatt feud. Sadly, Eric Rowan would go down with an injury, scrapping the 6th man until Night of Champions, and since Sting was otherwise engaged in the main event, the 3rd man became Chris Jericho. But whose side is he on? And speaking of the Wyatts, number 5, the Wyatt family versus John Cena, Big Show, and Justin Bieber, 2014. Wrestling gods are historically not kind, but Lord, they smile on us in 2014 by making sure this horrendous monstrosity never happened. For those of you who don't know, this is Justin Bieber. He makes relatively bland music, in between slowly transforming into a less handsome me. Give it up, Justin. You call those teeth? You f***ing idiot. Anyway, Kevin Eck, a former WWE writer, confirmed that plans were underway to bring in the Biebs to wrestle a match alongside Cena and Big Show at SummerSlam 2014. Why Big Show? Well, apparently it was going to be his reward because he was the guy with the connect. He knew Floyd Mayweather knew Bieber, and isn't that a table for 3? According to the writer, the feeling internally was that the company knew that Bieber would be heavily booed, so if the match had gone ahead, Cena would have spent the match being annoyed by Justin, his team would have won, and then he would have given Justin Bieber an AA afterwards. Honestly,
I kind of would have liked to see that, just the AA to Bieber. It would have brought joy to me like when he did the same to Kevin Federline.
Part of me is sad that we didn't get a chance to see just how angry fans would have gotten at the Bee, but at least Bray didn't have to lose to a much worse version of me. Number 4, Mick Foley versus Dean Ambrose 2012.
Ooh. Foley and Ambrose, man. A lot can compare. A lot of people can compare these two, man. Dean, loose screw, just like Mick. Honestly, I always used to say in the little wrestling groups at that time, like, WWE should bring back the Hardcore Championship, have Dean as the Hardcore Champion. I think he could definitely do the title justice.
This is Dean Ambrose. This is John Moxley. Ambrose, Moxley, Ambrose, Moxley.
Ambrose was for sure a watered down version. This is what I wanted Dean Ambrose to be. I wanted Dean Ambrose to be that extreme ECWS type of Mick Foley type of Terry Funk type of character that's just brutal and ruthless, but with PG and WWE kind of got to stand certain lines. He couldn't really flourish that way in WWE.
Literally though, how are these people the same person? God, it's amazing what a beard can do. The Mox is interim AEW champion right now and spends half his time bathed in the blood of his enemies like Conan the Barbarian, but if Conan the Barbarian drove a really sketchy van. WWE tried to make Dean Ambrose a hardcore wrestler, but every time they did it seemed to end in secondhand embarrassment for the lad. Either that bad match with Brock, or that bad Ambrose Asylum thing, or that time he lost a match because he forgot to unplug a monitor. Poor lad. It's even more of a shame because Ambrose could have been established as a hardcore legend from his first day in the company. See, while Dean ended up debuting at Survivor Series in 2012 with the rest of the Shield, the original plan was for him to debut alone before SummerSlam, going straight into a feud with Mick Foley. It even progressed to the point of WWE staging a work shoot encounter between the two men in a hotel lobby, and Ambrose going in hard on Foley online to the point where he allegedly made the hardcore legend uncomfortable. Sadly, the match never came to be, as Foley wasn't cleared to compete, but considering how well the Shield went, maybe it was for the best. Now, Daniel...
Honestly, I know that is not going to say Charlie Sheen. Honestly, I'm happy the way that the Shield went. I think their debut at Survivor Series that year was brilliant. I think it was, well done. It was a couple of holes in the whole CM Punk and the Shield thing, and was they working for CM Punk and all. It was kind of like that, but the debut went perfect. I didn't see it coming. I always heard of Roman and all of them, when they were down in developmental, but I think they did a really good job with that year.
Daniel Bryan versus Charlie Sheen, 2012. In 2012, Daniel Bryan was going through anger management with Kane, and Charlie Sheen had a short-lived sitcom called Anger Management. I get it, but weirdly, that wasn't the foundation for this baffling pitch of a match between the best wrestler in the world and the guy from Hot Shots. Man, though, in an alternative universe, SummerSlam 2012 would have been mental. It was only a year removed from Charlie Sheen's infamous Tiger Blood interview, so he was still a hot property question mark. Look at the funny man with his funny brain, the internet would say, and WWE struck while the iron was only a year old, bringing Sheen in on Raw to be WWE's social media ambassador.
That's crazy. Raw 1000 was 10 years ago. I remember Raw 1000 so vividly. I remember the intro, the Tonight is the Night thing. I remember CM Punk turning heel. I want to say that was when Raw first went 3 hours. Which was honestly, at first it sounded like a good idea, but now not so much. I wish they would go back to 2 hours and 5 minutes. I miss back in those days, man. But
for Raw's 1000th episode, during which he made fun of Daniel Bryan, because everyone was making fun of the best wrestler in the world back then. The Rock called him an Oompa Loompa, thanks Dwayne. Bryan fired back at Sheen, who then told the American Dragon that Bryan knew where to find him, aka Los Angeles, the host city of SummerSlam. Despite Bryan being up for the match, no one tied Sheen down to a contract, and he bailed on the match closer to the date, leaving Bryan with Kane instead, and the start of Team Hell No. So maybe it was for the best. Number 2, Seth Rollins versus Chris Jericho, 2018. All anyone can seem to talk about these days are doors and how forbidden they are. And while the idea of Rollins versus Jericho before the formation of AEW doesn't seem like too big of a deal, the two had already wrestled before a bunch on Raw in 2016 and at Roadblock that December. But here's a twist that would have made the match bonkers. In June 2018, back when Chris Jericho initially pitched this match to Vince McMahon, Seth Rollins was Intercontinental Champion, having won it in a Stormer at Mania 34. In June that year, Chris Jericho was doing his WWE sanctioned dates with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and at their marquee show Dominion, beat Tetsuya Naito for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. So Y2J's pitch was this: at SummerSlam 2018, Seth Rollins versus Chris Jericho, Intercontinental Champion versus Intercontinental Champion.
That would have been incredible. Like, just imagine, and it's crazy, I understand WWE really doesn't need a boost from other companies. They don't, they're the WWE. Other companies need them, if anything. But for the wrestling fan, this would have been incredible to see Rollins and Jericho, Intercontinental Champ versus Intercontinental Champ. That would have been Forbidden Door before Forbidden Door was Forbidden Door. Like, come on.
That's Rollins versus Chris Jericho, Intercontinental.
And of course, you even look at the WWE Intercontinental Championship and just the history Jericho has with it, and just my personal opinion, Jericho is one of the greatest Intercontinental Champions of all time.
Champion versus Intercontinental Champion. Yes, please. As mad as it seems, only 3 years earlier, WWE and New Japan had worked together to bring Jushin Thunder Liger to take over Brooklyn, and initially Vince seemed interested in the idea. It could have happened, but sadly, after the initial interest, the Big Dub proceeded to leave Jericho on red, and the match never came to be. And number 1, Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan, 1993. Now for the big one, the SummerSlam main event that should have bridged the gap between two eras of WWE. The Hulkamania era definitively ending with the Hulkster passing the torch to the new post-steroid face of the company, Bret Hart, the quarterback of the new generation era. I mean, everything was in place. Hulk Hogan was on his way out of the company. His star had been waning for a few years since Mania 6. The steroid scandal had dulled his shine, and he was ready to permanently leave wrestling behind him and make the lasting move to Hollywood. Bret Hart had been double screwed out the WWE Championship at Mania 9 and desperately needed a huge, definitive, televised win to officially crown him as the company's figurehead. When Hogan ended Mania 9 on top as champion in an absolutely harebrained bit of booking, the understanding was it was going to be Hogan versus Hart at SummerSlam 93. Hogan's farewell match, Bret going over. A photo shoot for the match took place with Hogan and Hart having a tug of war over the belt, but those photos are lost in the WWE vaults. And
there was a lot of guys that I feel like could have replaced Hulk Hogan. Bret Hart, of course, being one of them. Lex Luger being another one. Ultimate Warrior. There was definitely some people that WWE had in mind, but Hulk Hogan was such a larger than life personality. Bret Hart, incredible wrestler. But I mean, Bret Hart actually did a good thing. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, they really carried the company for when they did. Diesel as well, at a very dark time for the company. They, They held it down.
The match finish was even set in stone, with Hogan submitting for the very first time ever to the sharpshooter. Sadly, that didn't work for Hogan brother. Stories differ, of course, but the general consensus is that Hogan didn't believe Hart to be in his league, hated face versus face matches, and thought there was more money in the Hulkster versus the Monster Yokozuna rematch. Hogan instead had his farewell match at King of the Ring instead, in the middle of the card, losing to Yoko in a screwy fashion, and it's a goddamn shame. And that's our list. What alternative universe SummerSlam would you most like to see? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video around if you enjoyed it. Make sure you
would have liked to see Jericho and Seth. I really would love to have seen Ambrose and Mick Foley. Probably not in 2012, but maybe at a later date, man. But y'all let me know y'all thoughts and opinions on this 10 biggest canceled SummerSlam matches from partsFUNknown. Link down below in the description for y'all to check this video out in its entirety with no interruptions. Y'all new to the channel, y'all rock with me. Want daily reaction videos? Probably not. I need to get daily. I do daily on my other channel. But we might start doing daily on this channel, man. Hit that subscribe button for me. Thank you for watching MKE Maniaci. I'm out.